The Canada 1 cent coin from 1947 issued under George VI is one of the most historically significant small denomination coins in Canadian numismatics, largely because of the political changes reflected in its inscription. This bronze coin, commonly called a penny, features on its obverse the left-facing portrait of King George VI, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget, with the Latin legend GEORGIVS 6 DG Rex et IND IMP, which translates to George VI, by the grace of God, King and Emperor of India. The phrase IND-IMP, Emperor of India, is especially important as 1947 marked the year when India gained independence from British rule, leading to the eventual removal of this title from British and Commonwealth coinage. Because of this transition, the 1947 Canadian pennies are often found in two main varieties: those with the original inscription, including IND-IMP, and those later modified with a small maple leaf near the date, technically struck in 1948 but dated 1947, to indicate the updated royal title after India's independence. On the reverse side, the coin displays the iconic maple leaf twig design created by George Edward Kruger Gray, which became a lasting national symbol of Canada. The denomination 1 cent and the word Canada are inscribed along with the date 1947. The coin is composed primarily of bronze, about 95.5% copper, with tin and zinc making up the remainder, has a diameter of approximately 19.05 millimeters, and weighs around 3.24 grams. Its edge is plain, and the coin was struck at the Royal Canadian Mint in Ottawa. During this period, minting quality and volume were influenced by the lingering economic and industrial effects of World War II, although by 1947 production had stabilized compared to earlier wartime years. What makes the 1947 penny particularly interesting to collectors is not just its design, but the transitional nature of its varieties. The standard 1947 coin with IND-IMP was minted earlier in the year, while later political developments required the removal of the imperial title. However, new dies for 1948 were not immediately ready, so the mint struck coins dated 1947 with a tiny maple leaf next to the date to signify they were actually produced in 1948 with a revised legend, which no longer included IND-IMP. These 1947 maple leaf pennies are generally more sought after and can carry higher value depending on their condition. In terms of mintage, tens of millions of 1947 pennies were produced, making the regular variety relatively common in circulated grades. However, high-grade uncirculated examples, especially those with strong red luster, often referred to as red or RD condition, are much rarer and more valuable. Collectors typically evaluate these coins based on strike quality, surface preservation, and color, with designations such as brown BN, red-brown RB, and red RD used in grading. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC often certify these coins, which can significantly impact their market value. From a historical perspective, the 1947 Canadian 1 cent coin represents a turning point in the British Commonwealth, symbolizing the decline of imperial titles and the emergence of newly independent nations. The removal of Emperor of India from coinage reflects the broader geopolitical shift following India's independence and the gradual transformation of the British Empire into the modern Commonwealth. This makes the coin more than just currency. It is a small but tangible artifact of global political change. Today, although Canada officially discontinued the 1 cent coin in 2012, the 1947 penny remains widely collected and appreciated for its history, design, and transitional varieties. Whether found in pocket change decades ago or preserved in a collection, it offers insight into mid-20th century history, monarchic symbolism, and the evolution of Canadian coinage. Next top. The Canada 1 cent coin from 1981, issued during the reign of Elizabeth II, represents a later stage in the long history of Canadian small denomination coinage, combining traditional symbolism with modern minting practices of the late 20th century. This coin, commonly referred to as the Canadian penny, features on its obverse the right-facing portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Machin. This portrait, often called the Machin portrait, had been introduced in 1965 and remained in use on Canadian coinage until 1989, making it one of the most recognizable depictions of the Queen across the Commonwealth of Nations. Surrounding the portrait is the Latin inscription, Elizabeth II di Regina, which translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. Unlike earlier coins from the reign of George VI, this inscription reflects a simplified royal title, as Canada had by this time fully moved away from imperial-era designations such as Emperor of India, emphasizing instead its identity as a sovereign nation within the Commonwealth. On the reverse side, the 1981 1-cent coin retains the classic maple leaf twig design created by George Edward Kruger Gray, a motif that had been used since 1937 and had become a defining symbol of Canada. The design features two maple leaves attached to a single stem, representing unity and national pride, with the inscriptions Canada above and 1 cent below, along with the date 1981. The maple leaf itself is one of Canada's most enduring national emblems, widely associated with the country's natural heritage and identity, and its presence on the coin underscores continuity in Canadian coin design across decades. In terms of physical characteristics, the 1981 Canadian penny is composed primarily of bronze, typically around 98% copper with small amounts of tin and zinc, giving it a rich reddish-brown appearance when newly minted. The coin has a diameter of approximately 19.05 millimeters, a thickness of about 1.45 millimeters, and a weight of 3.24 grams, maintaining the traditional specifications that had been standard for Canadian 1-cent coins for many years. The edge of the coin is plain, without reading or lettering. These coins were produced by the Royal Canadian Mint, which by 1981 had developed highly efficient mass production capabilities, allowing for the striking of hundreds of millions of coins annually to meet circulation demands. Indeed, the mintage of the 1981 penny was extremely high, well into the hundreds of millions, making it one of the more common Canadian pennies and easily obtainable in circulated condition. From a numismatic perspective, the 1981 1-cent coin is generally not considered rare due to its high mintage, but it can still hold value for collectors depending on its condition. Coins are typically graded on a scale ranging from heavily worn, poor, to pristine uncirculated mint state, with special attention paid to surface quality, strike sharpness, and original luster. As with other copper coins, collectors often classify them by color: brown BN, red-brown RB, and red RD, with fully red uncirculated examples being the most desirable. Professional grading organizations such as PCGS and NGC frequently certify these coins, and high-grade specimens in certified holders can command premiums in the collector market, even for otherwise common dates like 1981. Historically, the 1981 penny belongs to a period when Canada was undergoing significant national development and identity consolidation. The early 1980s were marked by important political events, including the patriation of the Canadian Constitution in 1982, which formally established full legislative independence from the United Kingdom. Although the coin itself predates this event by a year, it reflects the modern era of Canadian sovereignty, where the monarchy remained a symbolic institution rather than an imperial authority. The simplified Latin legend Dei Regina illustrates this shift, emphasizing the Queen's role as Canada's monarch rather than as ruler of a vast empire. In everyday use, the 1981 1-cent coin functioned as a basic unit of currency, widely circulated in commerce for small transactions. However, over time, inflation reduced the purchasing power of the penny, eventually leading to its discontinuation. In 2012, the Canadian government officially ceased production of the 1-cent coin, and the Royal Canadian Mint stopped distributing new pennies, although existing coins remain legal tender. This decision marked the end of an era that had begun in the 19th century, making earlier pennies like the 1981 issue part of a long and continuous monetary tradition. Today, the 1981 Canadian penny is often collected as part of date and mint sets, or as a representation of late 20th century coinage. While it may not be rare, it carries historical and cultural significance, linking modern Canada with its earlier traditions of coin design and monarchy. For collectors, next up, the Canada 1-cent coin from 1984, issued during the reign of Elizabeth II. is a representative example of late 20th century Canadian coinage, combining long-standing national symbolism with standardized minting practices that had been refined over decades. Commonly referred to as the Canadian penny, this coin features on its obverse the right-facing portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, created by Arnold Machin, a design that had been in use on Canadian coins since 1965 and continued until it was replaced in 1990. The portrait shows the Queen wearing a tiara, reflecting a formal and timeless representation of the monarchy. Surrounding the effigy is the Latin inscription, Elizabeth II DG Regina, which translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. This abbreviated royal title reflects the modern constitutional role of the monarch within Canada and the Commonwealth of Nations, emphasizing sovereignty rather than imperial authority, unlike earlier coins that included titles such as Emperor of India. On the reverse side, the coin carries the classic maple leaf twig design by George Edward Kruger Gray, a motif first introduced in 1937 and retained for decades due to its strong association with Canadian identity. The design features two maple leaves attached to a single stem, symbolizing unity and natural heritage, with the word Canada above and the denomination 1 cent below, along with the date 1984. The maple leaf has long been one of Canada's most recognizable national symbols, appearing not only on coins, but also on the national flag and various official emblems, reinforcing a sense of continuity and pride. In terms of composition and physical specifications, the 1984 Canadian penny is primarily made of bronze, typically consisting of about 98% copper, with small amounts of tin and zinc. This composition gives the coin its characteristic reddish tone when new, although over time many coins darken to a brown color due to oxidation. The coin has a diameter of approximately 19.05 millimeters, a thickness of about 1.45 millimeters, and a weight of 3.24 grams, consistent with the standard dimensions of Canadian 1-cent coins during this era. The edge is plain, without any reading or inscription. These coins were struck by the Royal Canadian Mint, which by the 1980s operated advanced facilities capable of producing large volumes of high-quality coins for circulation across the country. The mintage of the 1984 1-cent coin was very high, reaching into the hundreds of millions, which makes it a common coin in circulated condition. As a result, it is generally not considered rare or highly valuable in typical grades. However, like all coins, its value can increase significantly depending on its condition. Numismatists classify these coins using grading systems that evaluate wear, strike quality, and surface preservation. Copper coins such as this are also categorized by color: brown BN, red-brown RB, and red RD, with fully red, uncirculated examples being the most desirable and often commanding higher prices among collectors. Professional grading services, such as PCGS and NGC, play an important role in certifying the authenticity and grade of coins, which can enhance their market appeal. From a historical standpoint, the 1984 Canadian penny belongs to a mature period in Canada's development as a fully independent nation. By this time, Canada had already patriated its constitution in 1982, marking a significant step in its political evolution. The coin reflects this era of stability and national identity, where traditional symbols like the monarchy and the maple leaf coexisted with a modern sense of sovereignty. The continued use of the Machin portrait of Elizabeth II also illustrates the enduring role of the monarchy as a ceremonial and unifying institution in Canadian society, even as the country functioned independently in its governance. In everyday life, the 1984 1-cent coin was widely used in small cash transactions, forming an essential part of the currency system. However, like many low-denomination coins around the world, its practical value declined over time due to inflation. This gradual loss of purchasing power eventually led to the discontinuation of the Canadian penny in 2012, when the Royal Canadian Mint ceased production and distribution of 1-cent coins. Despite this, pennies remain legal tender in Canada, though they are no longer commonly used in daily transactions. Today, the 1984 Canadian penny is often collected as part of broader date sets or as a representation of late 20th century coinage. While it is not rare, it holds historical and cultural significance, reflecting both continuity and change within Canadian society. For collectors, it offers an accessible entry point into numismatics, while for historians, it serves as a small but meaningful artifact of a time when even the lowest denomination coin carried practical importance in everyday commerce. Next up, the Canada 1-cent coin from 1987, issued during the reign of Elizabeth II, is a classic example of modern Canadian penny design just before major changes in portrait style and metal composition began to take place in the late 20th century. This coin, widely known as the Canadian penny, features on its obverse the right-facing portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, created by Arnold Machin, whose effigy had been in use on Canadian coinage since 1965. The Machin portrait presents the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, offering a dignified yet relatively simple depiction that became one of the most familiar images of the monarch throughout the Commonwealth of Nations. Encircling the portrait is a Latin inscription, Elizabeth II DG A Regina, meaning Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, which reflects Canada's status as a constitutional monarchy and an independent nation, no longer using extended imperial titles that had appeared on earlier coins from the reign of George VI. On the reverse side, the 1987 1-cent coin continues the long-standing maple leaf twig design created by George Edward Kruger Gray, first introduced in 1937. The design depicts two maple leaves attached to a single stem, symbolizing unity, growth, and the natural heritage of Canada. The word Canada appears above the leaves, while the denomination 1 cent is placed below, along with the date 1987. This reverse design remained largely unchanged for decades, making it one of the most enduring and recognizable elements of Canadian coinage. The maple leaf itself is deeply embedded in Canada's national identity, appearing on the national flag and widely used in official and cultural symbols, which adds an extra layer of meaning to even such a small value coin. In terms of physical characteristics, the 1987 Canadian penny was still struck in bronze, composed primarily of copper, around 98%, with small amounts of tin and zinc. This gives the coin its distinctive reddish appearance when freshly minted, although many coins in circulation have since toned to a darker brown due to oxidation. The coin has a diameter of approximately 19.05 millimeters, a thickness of about 1.45 millimeters, and a weight of 3.24 grams, maintaining the traditional specifications that had been standard for Canadian 1-cent coins for many years. The edge is plain, without any decorative elements. These coins were produced by the Royal Canadian Mint, which by the 1980s was operating with advanced minting technology capable of producing very large quantities of coins efficiently and consistently. The mintage of a 1987 1-cent coin was extremely high, reaching into the hundreds of millions, reflecting the continued demand for low-denomination currency in everyday transactions at the time. Because of this large mintage, the coin is very common in circulated condition and is generally not considered rare. However, its value to collectors can vary significantly depending on its state of preservation. Coins are graded on a scale that ranges from heavily worn to mint state uncirculated, and copper coins are further classified by color into brown BN, red-brown RB, and red RD. Fully red, uncirculated examples, especially those with strong original luster and minimal imperfections, are the most desirable and can command higher prices in the numismatic market. Professional grading services, such as PCGS and NGC, often certify these coins, which can enhance their authenticity and marketability among collectors. Historically, the 1987 penny represents a stable period in Canadian history, during which the country had already established full constitutional independence following the patriation of its constitution in 1982. The continued use of traditional designs and inscriptions reflects a balance between heritage and modern identity. The presence of Elizabeth II on the coin underscores the ongoing role of the monarchy as a symbolic head of state, while the maple leaf design emphasizes Canada's distinct national character. This era also precedes significant changes in Canadian coinage, such as the introduction of new portraits of the Queen and the eventual shift away from bronze compositions to more cost-effective materials in later years. In everyday use, the 1987 1-cent coin functioned as a fundamental unit of currency, widely used in cash transactions across Canada. However, like many low-value coins worldwide, its practical utility declined over time due to inflation and changing economic conditions. This decline ultimately led to the discontinuation of the Canadian penny in 2012, when the Royal Canadian Mint stopped producing and distributing 1-cent coins. Although pennies remain legal tender, they are no longer commonly used in daily commerce, and cash transactions are typically rounded to the nearest 5 cents. Today, the 1987 Canadian penny is commonly collected as part of date sets or as a representation of late 20th century coinage. While it is